It's beginning to feel a lot like Christmas. And
It
if
sure
you're, it is, isn't it? I know. And if you're looking for something, the perfect gift for a friend or for yourself, I recommend, maybe you can recommend it because it sounds really self-serving and narcissistic when I recommend it. The wonderful oral history of Star Trek, the 50-year mission.
Would that be the 50-year mission? Volume 1 and 2?
Volume 1. Now, I want to make an important distinction. Volume 1 available now in paperback. Volume 2 only in hardcover still.
Right.
So, but you can get the audio version, get the digital version. You can get them all because maybe you want them
get
all.
all of them.
You know, because that would be ideal. I would prefer you get them all if I had my druthers, as they say. And then, of course, also our other books, which are worth checking out. Nobody Does It Better, also available in hardcover and now in paperback.
That's about James Bond, isn't it?
How'd you guess?
It's
about James Bond.
Because nobody does it better. That's why.
It's a great book about James Bond. So as you get ready for the inevitable release of No Time to Die sometime in the next decade.
There's no time to release.
You want to pick up No Time to Die, again, also available on digital, audio, and in hardcover and paperback from Tor Forge. And if you want to do a deeper dive, check out So Say We All, our oral history of both Battlestar Galactica series, which is only available in hardcover. And I don't believe there's an audiobook. I just think it's digital. I'm not sure why they didn't do an audiobook. Maybe we
can do something about that.
Maybe we will. Maybe we'll just record our own and we'll show them. So anyway, if you're thinking about the holidays and wondering what to get, please check out my books with Ed Gross, The 50-Year Mission, Volume 1 and 2, So Say We All, an oral history of Battlestar Galactica, and most recently, Nobody Does It Better, a complete oral history of the James Bond films and Spy Mania. Ed Gross will thank you. Hey, Darren, have you been watching us on the Electric Now app?
I have. I haven't recently because I watch you pretty much every week when we're doing these things. But
yeah, but you know, it's you know what I love about the Electric Now app?
It's better on video.
Easy to use.
It's
better
really
on video.
Easy. Download the app and you watch us. That's all there is to it.
It's so simple.
And a lot of other cool stuff too.
You go to the App Store. It says Electric Now. You download it, and then in the United States,
press the button, and there it is.
There it is. And you can choose, you can bookmark it. There's plenty of other movies and TV show to enjoy and episodes of all your favorite Electric Surge podcasts. So why wait? Download the Electric Now app and start enjoying us anytime.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. Yeah. Just like the ones I used to know. Oh, yeah, where the treetops glisten. And children, listen. To hear sleigh bells in the snow. Oh, yes.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. With every Christmas card I write, may your days be merry and bright.
And may all your Christmases be white.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
And this is Darren Doctorman, and we are the Inglorious
Treksperts. And welcome back to part 2 of our holiday countdown of the greatest sci-fi episodes of all time. We're going to start back up at 75, episode 75, part 1. We did episode 101 to 74. And I'm thrilled to once again welcome back our 2 very special guests, Mr. Ashley Miller and Robert Meyer Burnett. Welcome back, guys.
Great honor to be here.
Thank you.
Any surprises there on the list for you yet?
So many.
So many.
Nothing but
Everything
surprise.
is a surprise.
I know. You think we're going to see some Star Trek?
Never.
Well, let's find out.
Let's find out.
Number 75. It's
Well,
Darren
look what we
Doctorman.
have here. It's from Star Trek The Next Generation, Relics. Yes, we do have Star Trek here. And in fact, it's a mashup of old and new, or relatively new, where we have the return of Captain Montgomery Scott. He was stuck in a transporter all this time, and through his smarts and ingenuity, he put the Enterprise into a static loop and kept his pattern relatively free of damage, though he hurt his arm. No, that was before.
And he's missing a finger.
Yeah, but look, it's a fun little look back at Scotty and the original series crew and how he reacts with particularly Geordi on the ship. He's a curmudgeon, and he doesn't really like the time that he's in, and he thinks everybody's stupid, and he just doesn't want to be there. But he helps them solve a big mystery about a big Dyson sphere, a sphere that collects all the energy from a star, and people live on the inside. And it would have been a great sci-fi thing, but we can only stay there for like 10 minutes. So that's what happens. But it's a fun episode, and they get Scotty to be on the bridge of the Enterprise on the holodeck, and he and Captain Picard have some Aldebaran whiskey together, and it's a nice moment. And a little bit of tears for Scotty as he goes off on his own in his own little shuttlecraft at the end. But it's a fun episode
his nursing
to watch.
home. So I think it's hard to realize now how powerful that episode was then. Because when they step onto the holodeck and he says no bloody A, B, C, D, or E, and you see the original Enterprise, which is the first time it was recreated for any of the shows, it really gets you. It had a lot of impact because we hadn't seen that bridge really since 1969.
That's correct.
And and Doohan is quite good in the episode.
Yeah.
Other than when he's reciting technobabble off script pages.
Right.
And that's a very effective scene. Although LeVar in a thankless position, because of course he's the guy who has to be mean to Scotty,
right?
And he doesn't. It's not a good look for him.
No, he comes off as kind of an a-hole, to be honest.
He does.
Yeah, it's a prick. Geordi the prick.
Ron Moore wrote it with a lot of heart. Clearly a huge fan of the original, and his love shows on every page of the script. It doesn't show up on a lot of lists of best Star Trek lists, but I think clearly from its position as number 75 on our list, we hold it in fairly high regard.
From all of us relics to you.
Okay, that
now,
brings us to number 74.
74. Back to Mr. Altman.
From the TV show Futurama, David X. Cohn marks the spot where no fan has gone before. And this, of course, is the great Star Trek love letter about a crazed fan, which is a cloud that gets the original, brings back from the dead the original cast of Star Trek, except for Scotty. They bring instead the long lost Welshie. Because Doohan famously said when asked, would Shatner be doing it as well? And they said yes. And he said, no way, I'm not doing it. So that's why Doohan does not lend his dulcet tones.
Jimmy isn't doing it.
He ain't doing it. He ain't doing it. But Shatner and Nimoy, Nichelle, all the other cast members, with the exception of the late DeForest Kelley, are represented. It is a wonderful script from David A. Goodman. It's charming. It's funny. It pays a great homage to a fundamental understanding of what makes original Star Trek tick. A lot of big laughs. And it's just a wonderful episode. Even if you're not a fan of Futurama, you're sure to get a kick out of this great love letter to the original Star Trek.
Now, on to Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett for number 73.
Well, okay. One of the great unsung science fiction shows created by Terry Nation in the wake of Doctor Who that not a lot of people talk about is the 4-season British science fiction show Blake's 7.
Next Saturday.
I think we can find ourselves another figurehead, someone we can use to unify and expand the Rebel Alliance.
The last ever episode of Blake 7.
It's Blake, isn't it? What on earth happened to you?
Well, most of it wasn't on Earth, Tom.
Have you betrayed us? You betrayed me.
Watch Blake 7, finally. Blake reappears. Only on UK Go.
It's rebellious. There's galactic empires. It's very Star Wars-esque. It's about a band of rebels. I can't even begin to explain the complexities of the show because I'm talking about the series finale of it. Avon, Tarrant, Diana, Sulin, Orak. I mean, there's all these characters that people are being like, who? What? I mean, Farscape is mainstream compared to Blake 7. And I have to just say that this episode is called Blake. It is the 52nd episode of the show. And the main character, Blake, in terms of Blake 7, hadn't been seen for a very long time in the series. People thought he might have been dead. And in this episode, the crew of the Liberator, now the crew of the Scorpio, goes to Gouda Prime in search of, well, Blake. And I have to say that this episode pulls out all the stops. It is the ultimate episode of the show. It brings back the titular character of Blake and Avon, Avon is one of the great, I call him anti-heroes of science fiction. This show does not get enough love. It is available. I have all the episodes on DVD. It's not going to ever come out on Blu-ray because it was finished on tape like so many BBC shows were, but it is sophisticated. It is, it has a depth to it. And it is, I think, one of the great science fiction shows of all time. And this is a tremendous series finale. And I know I'm being a little vague. I couldn't even begin because most people haven't seen it. So to get into the machinations of what's going on, I'd literally have to explain 4 years of plot and characters. But I just want to say, watch Blake 7, love it. And this episode it does not disappoint as a series finale.
I believe that's called vague listing. But
yes,
all right.
I'm vague listing.
Well, at number 72, finally, Robert Burnett is going to introduce a show that has been notable from its omission so far, but making its debut at number 75 into the competition.
72.
Rob, tell us number
BJ
72.
and the Bear?
All right. Well, this is about this is F. Scott Fitzgerald's debut novel, published in 1920. Oh, wait a minute. It's not F. Scott Fitzgerald's debut novel. This is an episode of the original series. It is a first season episode of the original series, and it is the episode that is notable because Spock falls in love. The Enterprise rolls up on a colony run by Elias Sandoval, and a group of settlers have made this idyllic agrarian colony where everybody seems to be loving life. Everything is beautiful. And Spock finds a woman that he encountered in the past named Leela Kalomi, played by Charles Bronson's wife, and Jill Ireland, who is she has a classical, timeless beauty, and she's been in love with Spock since they first met. And they haven't encountered one another. And then we find out the secret of the colony is there's a local plant life that has the spores that will shoot you and I guess pump you full of, I don't know, the equivalent of ecstasy, where you are calm and blissed out. And it's the ultimate sort of drug, but it's also, it binds you to the land. And it is the secret of this idyllic community. And it allows you to sort of let go of your inhibitions, let go of anything that's stopping you from being you. And of course, Spock is shot by these spores, and the entire Enterprise crew abandons the ship, leaving Kirk as the last man on the Enterprise. He's lost his command, and Spock basically falls in love with a hot blonde. McCoy is making mint juleps, enjoying the farm life. And it really is about the loss of everything. It's about the loss of order, and it's about the loss of ambition and the loss of drive. And ultimately, while everyone remembers the love that Spock and Leela Kalomi share in this episode, and Spock, it's the one moment he is happy, he understands happiness. But at the end of the day, this colony that these people have made is an empty vessel. It leads nowhere.
Nothing sadder than a dream that failed.
And that's what Kirk says. Another dream that failed. There's nothing sadder. And it was one of these moments in my life. I was like, my God, it's an episode that not many people talk about, but it is one of the most resonant and meaningful episodes of the original series, especially as you grow older as a Star Trek fan.
Come back to the planet with me. You can belong again. Oh, come back with me, please.
I can't.
I love you. I said that 6 years ago, and I can't seem to stop repeating myself. On Earth, you couldn't give anything of yourself. You couldn't even put your arms around me. We couldn't have anything together there. We couldn't have anything together anyplace else. But we're happy here. I can't lose you now, Mr. Spock. I can't.
I have a responsibility to this ship. To that man on the bridge. I am what I am, Layla. And if there are self-made purgatories, then we all have to live in them. Mine can be no worse than someone else's.
I have lost you, haven't I? And not only you. I've lost all of it. The spores. I've lost them too.
It shows that mankind is not meant for paradise. Mankind is meant to struggle and to strive and to survive. And it's that way that he gets stronger and moves forward. And without those barriers, he ceases to exist.
Are you saying that we need our pain?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. You know, it's commonplace and understandable that people gravitate towards the love story between Spock and Jill Ireland. But there's another love story that's just as powerful in that episode, which, of course, is the love story between Captain Kirk and the Enterprise. The only reason that he's able to defeat the influence of the spores is because he refuses to leave his one true love. And, of course, he's already, apoplectic because he's been told, he accuses an officer of mutiny. He goes, yes, sir. It is, and it's a great Kirk episode, too, because he's almost helpless against the power of the spores, but yet he is clever enough to figure out a way to free Spock. And he knows, what he's done and has to live with it. Because
it's probably one of the greatest taunting scenes ever in Star Trek, where Kirk confronts Spock to get the spores to let go of their influence on him.
Yeah. And again, some great location lensing. A wonderful script by D.C. Fontana, the late Dorothy Fontana. Very sensitively written, very smart, and
explicitly
originally called The Way of the
Lotus
Spores
Eaters from the Odyssey. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah,
like almost like beat for beat, but like in a truly wonderful way.
Right.
Great. Well, I'm glad to see a Star Trek: The Original Series finally making it to our holiday countdown, which brings us to number 71 and Ashley Edward Miller with another returning show to the countdown.
All right. At number 71, we've got another entry from a childhood favorite of all of ours, from The Greatest American Hero, an episode called Live at 11. Live at 11 is actually one of the standout episodes of The Greatest American Hero. And it's also kind of, I don't want to say that it's off format, because it's not, but it's kind of an interesting spin on the format. Basically, in this episode, the Greatest American Hero, William Cat, gets a new superpower, the ability to essentially to connect minds with people. And what plays out is almost beat for beat the Dead Zone. I mean, that's what we've got for an hour. Is The Greatest American Hero is doing the Dead Zone. He's Christopher Walken. So if you can imagine Christopher Walken playing The Greatest American Hero, believe it or not, I'm walking on air. He is walking on air, right? I mean, come on. Anyway, great episode, super fun, like weirdly smart, like and just kind of audacious in its own way.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I'm really surprised to see Greatest American Hero now
Again.
with two again here on the countdown. I wonder if we'll be seeing it again. Very, very interesting, wonderful episode, off concept episode, which of course brings us to episode 70, another show, beloved genre show, making its debut on the holiday countdown. Robert Burnett, tell us what it is.
The Body, from the 5th season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This episode packs a wallop, and it is a show about love, but mostly a show about loss. And in this episode, it's written and directed by series creator Joss Whedon, and it is about Buffy and Dawn losing their mother, and they discover her body, which in talking with 9/11, Buffy is talking 911, trying to figure out what to do. There are flashbacks, and we see Christmas, and there's bait and switches pulled. But no, at the end of this episode, it's a mom who's passed away, not from any supernatural event, not from anything that Buffy Summers could have prevented from happening, but as the result of a brain tumor that her mother had. She had an aneurysm and died. And yes, there's a little bit of vampire action, but it's basically ultimately about two sisters and their friends having to come to grips with the loss of their mother. And it's not necessarily something you would think that the show would normally deal with, but it is heart-wrenching and it is emotional. And just when you thought that Buffy the Vampire Slayer couldn't make you feel something different, they do this. And I think it's one of the best episodes of the show. It is unexpected, and it is emotionally devastating. And
it's a real demarcation point, don't you think, for the series, where it goes from being sort of high school show, because you're dealing with stuff like in the wonderful episode Innocence, what happens when a guy sleeps with you and then doesn't call you back,
right.
And all these sort of high school allegories. It becomes a much more adult show after The Body, and deals with much more adult things like, how am I going to support my family when, the breadwinner dies? There's a lot. It becomes a much darker show, and maybe not as entertaining, but much more adult. And The Body is really the beginning of that.
And I think it needed that in order to evolve and to become something. If without this sort of watershed moment, I don't think it would have become the show that everybody loves, because the show continually evolved. But this was a show that, like you said, made it become one of the great fantasy shows that's ever been on TV.
And Joss Whedon has been taking a lot of slings and arrows in the press lately, but I've never seen anything that made me think ill of him. I think he is an incredibly creative talent. He's done amazing things for the genre. We've all met him and spent some time with him, and he's an impressive guy. And I think with The Body, where he made the very audacious creative choice not to use a score, just sensational and a great addition to our list, which brings us to number 69, returning to the countdown. Darren Doctorman, tell us what it is.
Well, it's a body of another kind, from the wonderful Lost in Space, from one of the more goofy seasons. This is Journey Inside the Robot, probably the biggest, dumbest episode ever made of Lost in Space, but I had so much fun as a kid that it was awesome. For some reason, the robot is incapacitated by aliens and is lying on his back, and he starts to grow, and he grows to a huge size, and it is up to Will and Penny and I think Dr. Smith to go inside the robot through the tread section and through the legs and to walk through and fix him somehow. And as they go through, they find set pieces from Fantastic Voyage and all sorts of stuff that were lying around the Fox lot. And it's so fun, and it's sort of like Spock's brain. in that we have to fix
robot's body.
Yeah, we have to fix a beloved member of the crew, and it's just a lot of fun, and it's stupid, and yes, but I love it. Lost in Space.
But it didn't have Nancy Sinatra clones in go-go boots, so that's why Spock's brain will always have the advantage in my mind. But that's just me. Okay, well, so shockingly, at number 68, we have a show making its debut. You may be surprised to hear that this is anywhere in our top 101. Ashley's about to tell you why.
Okay, so coming in at number 68 is the pilot episode of one of my favorite shows as a kid. It's the pilot of Airwolf, entitled Shadow of the Hawk. So you might not think of this as
now, this is not Blue Thunder. This is Airwolf. Don't get them confused.
This is Airwolf.
Yes. That's what I was humming. Damn it.
Right. Great goddamn theme song. So Airwolf, it doesn't really leap immediately to mind as a science fiction show, but the truth of the matter is it kind of is. It is probably the first techno thriller, pop culture techno thriller that made its way onto television, certainly, beating Tom Clancy to the punch by a couple of years. And it stars Jan Michael Vincent, who is quite good when he's not completely
sober.
When he's sober, he's quite good. And Ernest Borgnine, who, as we've discussed, the kids love. As basically, he is one of the greatest pilots in the world. He recovers a stolen piece of a high-tech weapon, a high-tech helicopter that's supersonic. It has a stealth mode that's codenamed the Airwolf. They call it the Lady.
Designed by Andy Probert, by the way.
Was it really?
Yes.
Wow, I love that helicopter, man. That show made such an impression on me. Clearly. It really made an effort to turn the hero Stringfellow Hawk into a real character with an actual interior life. It was beautifully shot, beautiful location work on that show, especially the pilot. They were really going for something there, and something a little more. A little bigger, a little more adult than what was happening on television at the time. It ran for, I want to say 3 seasons before they finally couldn't deal with Jan Michael Vincent's shit anymore. But great show. When it was at its best, Shadow of the Hawk was certainly that show at its most epic, and big and cool and crazy. And again, it just had the theme song to end all theme songs. Really, we should just do the top 101 greatest television theme songs.
Maybe we will next year.
Next year we may be
that's what we're down to.
It's funny because Glenn Larson, they used to call Glenn Larceny because he's take these movies and turn them into TV shows. Basically knock stuff off. In the case of Airwolf, it's sort of funny that this was a show that knocked off Blue Thunder, which was not even a particularly successple movie,
right,
which then spawned its own TV series, right, as well as
which
Airwolf.
Was equally not successful.
Yes.
But Airwolf was probably the most successful of all of them.
Yeah.
And I think that's because of Ernest Borgnine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always because of Ernest Borgnine.
Because as we know, the kids love him. Okay. That brings us to number 67. Making its debut on the holiday countdown. It's Star Wars Rebels. The episode, Twilight of the Apprentice.
It was foretold that you would be here. Our long-awaited meeting has come at last.
I'm glad I gave you something to look forward to.
We need not be adversaries. The Emperor will show you mercy if you tell me where the remaining Jedi can be found.
There are no Jedi. You and your Inquisitors have seen to that.
Perhaps this child will confess what you will not.
I was beginning to believe I knew who you were behind that mask, but it's impossible. My master could never be as vile as you.
Anakin Skywalker was weak. I destroyed him.
Then I will avenge his death.
Revenge is not the Jedi way.
I am no Jedi.
And this is just a fantastic animated show by the great Dave Filoni. This was an episode that marked the return of Ahsoka Tano, in which she and of course Ezra is lured into a trap by the evil Darth Maul. And the brilliant two-part episode culminates with a fabulous lightsaber fight between Ahsoka Tano and Darth Vader, with James Earl Jones reprising the voice of the Dark Lord of the Sith. This is as good as kids animation gets. No, it's not kids animation, but this is as good as animation gets. It's a powerful, strong, compelling show with some beloved heroes. It's as good as anything in the live action Star Wars movies. And it's a fabulous two-part and a very underrated series. It's becoming a big part of the Mandalorian and the extended Star Wars universe on Disney Plus. So if you haven't seen Star Wars Rebels, you should check it out, because there are a lot of threads that I think these shows are going to be pulling on in live action. And this is one of the best.
Number 66, Mr. Burnett.
Wow. Well, this is again a season finale, Abaddon's Gate. It's the end of the third season of The Expanse. Also, the end of The Expanse's run on the Sci-Fi Channel before it became an Amazon show. And the shit hits the fan in this episode. Ring gates are opening to alternate universes, or not alternate universes, but many other places in our universe. And of course, the great David Strathairn is the villain of this, and Kara G is a Kamina drummer, and they're the Belters that are seeking their independence. And of course, the crew of the Rocinante are trying to stop them from ending everything. And there is so much at stake in this episode, and it is the episode that literally opens up the universe, the galaxy, to everyone in the Milky Way, and it expands the show. It could have been the series finale, but it wasn't. The proto molecule does what it does, and it creates the rings, and it opens up the galaxy. It's epic science fiction. I can't tell you, when I watched this episode, I was like, my jaw was on the floor. The stakes were huge. The concepts were giant. The characters were great. And I really thought this was going to be the end, but thank God Jeff Bezos from Amazon saved the show, and we got season 4 and now the exquisite season 5. And hopefully they're going to do all 9 books, but they say they're going to end after book 6. But
Rob, you got to help me with this. I've tried to start watching this show at least 3 times. I haven't made it past episode 3. Tell me how to do this.
You got to get to episode 4.
I was afraid
by the end of episode 4. I'm telling you.
Okay.
You got to give it one more time. I
trust
episode.
you and I believe you.
People used to tell me that about The Wire, and then I watched it, and I was hooked from the first episode. So I never understood why people were saying, oh, give it to the 4th episode. And it's like The Wire from like the first 10 minutes was brilliant.
I have to tell you, though, Darren's correct. This show is a slow burn. But once you get it's like a roller coaster. It's taking you slowly up, and you're like, I'm telling you, by the end of episode 4, it plunges down.
And I have to admit, I'm particularly numbed by the Canadianness.
Okay, but I have to tell you, one of the things about this show, I do think it's one of it might be the very best produced science fiction show, because the way they use, like, they'll figure out a way to use a sliver of a set, the same way in TNG's Relics, they built a sliver of the bridge, and they'll use like one reverse with a green screen insert behind somebody to create, and season 5 season 5. It's astonishing what they get away with.
Bigger budget when they moved to Amazon than they did at Sci-Fi Channel. And
But
the great Nareen Shankar is the showrunner, another
Yep.
child of that Star Trek writers, that all-star Star Trek writers room. You know, that led to Ron Moore, Brandon Braga, Renee Echeverria, Robert Hewitt Wolf, all these guys who came out of Star Trek.
Well, I would love to enjoy it, and I will try again.
It's on our list.
Just get past episode 4.
Okay.
There you go. Okay, so very popular show. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very happy to see The Expanse making its appearance at number 66, which brings us to number 65, and a show or rather a miniseries that changed the face of television. Before we talked about Kenneth Johnson and the Incredible Hulk. Well, Kenny Johnson returned with a show, a miniseries that really had a huge impact on a lot of people. And of course, I'm talking about 1984's V.
Tonight is your chance to see how it all began, to relive the excitement that is V, the most extraordinary miniseries ever. A daring TV journalist struggling to uncover the startling truth behind the aliens' visit to Earth. And a beautiful and brave young scientist fighting for the very survival of the human race. Together, they take you on a fantastic journey to meet the Visitors. Prepare yourself for a television event that's out of this world. Prepare for V. Next.
A lot of people don't realize the kind of impact this had. It ran for 2 nights on NBC, and nobody had seen anything like it. Giant spaceships hovering over the major cities of the world. Mark Singer, as a journalist who is invited to chronicle the arrival of aliens on Earth. Faye Grant, who ultimately becomes a resistance leader. And they were never able to recapture the magic. There was a sequel under different producers, The Final Battle, which, while entertaining, did not have the heart and the sort of allegory that infused the original V. And then, of course, the series, it became a camp fest. And then more recently, ABC rebooted it to even lesser effect. But the original miniseries was a huge pop culture phenomenon. Everyone was talking about it. I remember I was in high school at the time and, coming in and everyone was talking about V. I mean, it was something that not since the day after had like a show completely dominated the quote unquote water cooler conversation. Right. And if you go back and you look at it, you could argue it dated a little bit, but it's a very strong story because Kenneth Johnson said, he wanted to deal with the occupation. He went back and looked at Vichy France. He looked back, at the occupation in occupied France and the Nazi youth and Aryan youth. And it's a very effective story. Sometimes a little too on the nose, as in the case of Leonardo Cimino's Holocaust survivor. But really great. Right. Some great action. David Stipes, who later worked on Next Generation, did with some great ships, some great shows. Clearly a big influence on our benefactor, Dean Devlin. Because Independence Day took a lot of the iconography of V and made it even cooler and better. It's number 65 on our list.
By the way, I just want to point out that Warner Archive recently remastered both V and V: The Final Battle on Blu-ray, and when you go back and you watch it, like Mark said, it really works. Yeah. At least the first V miniseries really works.
They haven't done the TV series yet. That's only on DVD.
Right. Number 64 on our list, though I love it dearly, I'm not going to say Journey Inside the Robot again. Luckily, I do have a backup in my mind that I hoped to be able to use, and this is it. The episode is from Batman, the animated series. And it is my absolute favorite episode of that show. And it is called Beware the Gray Ghost.
This place is amazing. It's just like the Gray Ghost's lair. It's almost an exact replica. Let me show you something else. As a kid, I used to watch you with my father. The Gray Ghost was my hero. So it wasn't all for nothing.
It is a great episode about a TV actor that Bruce Wayne idolized as a kid. He watched the TV series in black and white with Alfred standing next to him as a child, and the Gray Ghost was the hero that Batman would actually become in real life. And he gets to meet this actor through a series of unfortunate events that is all tied in with a toy store owner who is doing nefarious deeds, let's say. And the actor who played the Gray Ghost is played by Adam West. And it has that extra sort of layer of wonderfulness in it that it is absolutely emotional and it makes you tear up, especially if you're of a certain age. And
it's a great episode.
It's a great episode. It has a great
and there's so many
score.
great episodes of that series, but
Yeah.
that's one of the best, along with Almost Got 'Em and a couple of
Heart of Ice.
But Heart of Ice. But what I think I'm so happy to see Beware the Grey Ghost on our list. Batman the Animated Series to this day remains certainly one of the best adaptation, or of the Dark Knight, if not
Fantastic.
the best. So great choice. That brings us to number 63. Once again, Darren Doctorman bringing us a show making its debut on the countdown.
Yes. Well, I know Mr. Burnett is going to have something to say about this as well. Even though our argument wasn't about this episode, it was about another episode. But this is from the wonderful series from Jerry Anderson, UFO. And it is the first pilot episode called Identified. And it deals with the question, what if a huge movie studio is actually just a front for a secret organization battling aliens? And I think that's the greatest thing ever.
It may be the greatest premise of a TV show ever.
It's so great. And
by the way, it is a working movie studio. Harlington Straker Studios is actually producing movies, and the leader of that studio also happens to be the leader of, you can go on and talk about that.
Well, Commander Straker is head of Harlington Straker Studios.
Straker, I hardly know her.
Bum. And he has an office that is basically an elevator that goes underground, and the whole operation is down there and connected to a wonderful moon base with bewigged women in skimpy outfits. Well, not skimpy, but very form-fitting outfits.
Quite
Well,
the
they can
opposite.
change.
They're
They
not
morph.
skimpy.
But they can change. You unzip them. They go from skimpy to being full-bodied. Yeah.
But let's just say the moon is a very groovy place.
And it's also a window to heaven.
That's for the eyes of lovers below. And yeah, it's great. And, the hardware in it is great. The software in it is great. And just so many great things to enjoy UFO about. And the pilot is a great sort of introduction to all of this.
It winds up being one of the darkest live action science fiction shows ever made. The fatalistic version of it, the idea that these characters, our main characters, are fighting a clandestine war. It's a multinational organization that is super secret, Shadow, the supreme headquarters of the Alien Defense Organization, but they can't tell anyone what they're doing, and the aliens are stealing organs because they're a dying race. It is a really, really dark show.
Human organs, not musical instruments.
Right.
Yes, human
Although
organs.
that would also be cool. Also has a great theme song.
Oh, it's great.
One of the best.
Welcome to my ocean kitchen.
That's right.
We were looking for an organ. We didn't know. It has a great theme. I think a lot of people listening are probably surprised at what a strong showing Jerry Anderson is making on the countdown. He's in fact right now. We've seen more of Jerry Anderson than we've seen of Gene Roddenberry, more of Irwin Allen than we've seen of Gene Roddenberry. It'll be interesting to see if we see any of his other shows like Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, which is a beloved, or Time Tunnel. But we'll find out as we continue our countdown. That brings us to number 62 and Robert Burnett with another show making its debut on the holiday countdown.
Star Trek Voyager, the episode Timeless. Now, this episode should be everything wrong with Star Trek. It was written by Brandon Braga and Joe Menosky, the two crazy wild men, the Hunter S. Thompsons of the writing staff of Star Trek Voyager. I mean, you want space anomalies, you want weird horror elements, you want bizarreness. The two of them together, you'd think everything could go off the rails. This time, they create what I think is magic. Even though it's got time travel, an alternate future, it's got a teaser where we find out that the Starship Voyager crashed on an ice world in an amazing effects sequence. Everybody was killed except Harry Kim and Chakotay. And in the teaser, we find them. We don't know it's them at first. And they find the Voyager. They find the numbers of the Voyager, the NCC numbers underneath the ice. And it goes from there. and it is about two men trying to change a timeline to save their crew, which became kind of a Voyager staple or a cliche, depending on how you want to look at it. Directed by LeVar Burton, but this episode is, I mean, I hate to say it, it's what Star Trek is all. It's an anomalous episode, but Voyager was all about everything that people loved about Star Trek, like the time travel episodes and all that. Voyager did that way too much. It relied on these kinds of gimmicks. This episode shouldn't work, but it does. And I love this episode.
It's so funny, Rob. You should make no apologies because, you know, if I read the TV description, Chakotay and Harry Kim saved the Voyager, I would say, I don't have to watch it this week. But you know what? the thing is, I did watch it, and it's great. You know, not only do you have the Voyager crashing in a much cooler sequence than Generations when the Enterprise crashes, but
or in Discovery when the Discovery crashes in the ice.
Oh, I don't know. I haven't seen that show,
Oh,
but
well.
I do think that this is a wonderful episode. I agree with everything you said. It should not have worked. And again, LeVar Burton, Geordi being the dick, you know, who's the one causing, you know, who's in the way of somebody's obsession. You know, it's amazing how often he gets the thankless role of being the impediment. The adversary to our quote unquote beloved characters.
And as the director of the episode, you know, he agreed to be in it because he got to direct it too.
Totally. But it's a wonderful episode, and it's a very interesting pick. I'll be curious to see how much Voyager we see on this list, given that we're already at number 62, and we haven't seen anything from Deep Space Nine. We've seen very little of Next Generation and very little of TOS. And no Enterprise, so it'll be no Discovery.
Lieutenant Yar.
No Lieutenant Yar. So we great pick, and that takes us to number 61. Surprisingly, the return of another show from earlier in the countdown.
You know, guys,
here's the thing:
for those who believe that life here began out there. With the original Battlestar Galactica, and one of my very favorite episodes, two-parters, War of the Gods.
Whatever they are, they're coming right at us and fast.
They must be traveling at speeds beyond our comprehension.
Your people will be safe under my leadership. I've come to prepare your way to Earth.
And what kind of games do they play where you come from?
Games that would amaze you.
You would hope that the humans have made so advanced a breakthrough?
The alternative is that we have encountered a new and more powerful force in the universe.
Apollo, don't ever make the mistake of threatening me again, or you'll forfeit your life.
Now, you might ask yourself, other than vamping, Ashley, why did you begin your description of this with the opening narration of the show? Well, for two reasons. Number one, because it's badass. Number two, because it's read by Patrick Macnee. Patrick Macnee, who also provides the voice of the Cylon Imperious leader, who also plays Count Iblis, the devil himself, the antagonist of these episodes, the villain, the ultimate villain of the original Battlestar Galactica. And he is fantastic. Every word that comes out of that man's mouth. I mean, come on, he's John Steed. He has to be cool. It's scary. It's awesome. It is really the one part of the original mythology of the show that Ron Moore, for whatever reason, decided not to include in the Battlestar Galactica reimagining. I think in some ways to its detriment, because it was just so goddamn interesting. On the other hand, how do you follow Patrick Macnee? I don't know that
it's McNee.
Is it?
Actually, it's McNee.
It's Patrick
Isn't it pronounced
McNee.
like with the British?
Not Patrick
Isn't
Macnee.
It Puttermaker?
It's Patrick McNee.
It's just
Star
McNee.
of A View to a Kill.
Yes.
Yeah. Damn it.
Okay. Well, look.
He was in the Avengers Endgame.
It's a fantastic choice. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised. This is our third original Battlestar Galactica episode to make the countdown so far. But I think it's well earned in this case. It has one of the great part one finales ever, where basically Count Iblis has granted Adama and the Council of 12 3 wishes, basically 3 requests. And they've asked as one of the requests that their enemy be delivered. And there's this montage where he says, if that is your request, he will grant your enemy will be delivered to you unto you this night. And Baltar decides suddenly that he's going to turn himself in to the Colonials, and he arrives, and there's this great montage and this incredible swelling Stu Phillips music as our enemy is delivered unto us. It's biblical, it's operatic, it's awesome, and for all the goofiness, this is as dark as the show ever got, other than the complete annihilation of the human race.
Right.
But it's
so that was followed by a trip to the casino.
It's fantastic, and for all these secular shows, like Star Trek and everything, Galactica was the one show, because Larson was a Mormon, that wasn't afraid to deal with religion. And so you had the angels, the light ship, and then you had this demonic force, whether it be Satan or Asmodeus or whatever, in Count Iblis, which is the Arabic name for demon or devil. And it's just great stuff. And it shows that there is a place for religion and science fiction, and or at least religious themes, and it's terrific and a great pick.
Which brings us to number 60 and Robert Meyer Burnett,
and another debuting show on the calendar.
I have to say that I have a love-hate relationship with the series Lost. I thought it started ridiculously. It kind of lost me, but when you get to the 4th season of this show, it's so outlandish and crazy. But this episode, The Constant, is the episode everybody remembers, because it's the episode where Desmond, it deals with being unstuck in time. It deals with love and being anchored to somebody. What does it mean to be a constant? It would be to try and describe what goes on in this episode. One of the things about Lost that I always thought was so funny is that no one ever sat down. Like, there was never an episode where people are like, we're traveling through time. Isn't that insane? Like, nobody ever actually sat down and talked about their situation. But this episode, it sheds light into one of the more mysterious characters, which was, of course, Desmond. And Saeed and you got Jeff Fahey's character, and it was such a Locke. This wasn't really his episode, but this episode I think took the show to an emotional level that we'd never felt before, and it took it to a different place, and it became. Suddenly, you watch Lost and like, what is going on in the show? But this episode was all about emotion, and it was all about feeling, which was different. And this, I think, was the show that was single-handedly responsible for cementing Lost's reputation to being this amazing show that people love, aside from the worst season, which I feel is the greatest audience betrayal of all time. But
I got to tell you, Rob, I am usually unimaginably completely simpatico with Rob Burnett and his taste in popular culture. However, I am so in disagreement with this, not the choice of The Constant, which I think is terrific, but his dismissal of the first 3 years of Lost. I think in the wake of that awful season finale, we forget how truly groundbreaking and good Lost was for such a long time.
I wasn't dismissing it. It's just they didn't know what they were doing. They were making it up as they went along.
Absolutely. But that pilot is one of the great pilots, both from a production point of view,
no doubt,
and a storytelling. I mean, it's the mystery box. When the mystery box is closed, it's fascinating. When the mystery box is opened, it's always inevitably a letdown. We all know that. JJ has yet to, he's never had the goods inside the mystery box.
No.
But the box itself is wrapped in some very appealing tinsel and foil and very, you want to open it on Christmas morning, but the key is don't open it. Don't open the box. So
what JJ missed in his mystery box speech is that the reason there were mystery boxes is that magic stores couldn't sell a bunch of stuff that people didn't want. So they put it in a box to hide what it was so that they could sell it.
Yeah. So I agree that The Constant is a great episode. Fantastic. I think there are a lot of great episodes of Lost. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see more Lost as we continue the countdown.
Well, that will bring us now to number 59 and also Mr. Burnett.
This is one of the greatest episodes of television ever. It's a UFO episode. Ed Straker has to deal with the fact that, first of all, this is an episode in the middle of a science fiction action adventure show. It opens with Ed Straker dealing with his destroyed marriage because his secrecy in creating Shadow, his wife thinks he's having an affair, so his marriage went south. Now he's estranged from his wife, and he sees his son on the weekends. His son chasing after him after a night, a day out. His son wants to show him a model ship and gets hit by a car. And his kid is dying. And Ed Straker, fighting aliens, the greatest fight of his life is to see his son survive. And it turns out that there's an experimental drug that might save his life, that he can pull strings and use shadow equipment and technology to get this drug from America to Britain quickly. But it turns out that a UFO event occurs, and Straker he either gets the drug to save his son, or he reroutes the plane that's carrying the drug and also shadow equipment to triangulate a potential alien defector that could be the secret of the whole war against the aliens. And he has the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. And he reroutes the shadow equipment. And it turns out the alien defector is real, but the real aliens track the alien defector down and find him. At the end of the episode, the defector is killed and Straker's son dies. And it is the most dark, fatalistic show. And Ed Straker is left in the lobby of the hospital where his son has just died, and his ex-wife, who hates him anyway, comes out with her new husband and looks at him and says, "I never want to see you ever again, ever." And she's screaming. Her new husband walks her out, and Ed Straker, there's this great overhead shot where he's left alone with the weight of the world on his shoulders. He's fighting a war to save humanity, and it's now cost him the life of his son. And my God, is it shattering.
Yeah. It's an amazing episode.
The marionettes on Thunderbirds could never have handled an episode
like
this.
It's funny. That's what you say that, because I was just going to say the conventional wisdom with these Jerry Anderson series are always, the acting is so wooden. Everyone thinks that's so funny because, of course, he's famous for Thunderbirds and all those shows. But the reality is there was some great drama on UFO. There was some good drama on Space 1999. Some good acting. This whole cliche of wooden acting, I think, is a misnomer and unfair to these shows. Are they perfect shows? No, but they had perfect moments. And UFO more so even than Space 1999, and given the fact it was so short-lived, is really worth seeking out for those who are not familiar with it.
And for I'd like to say, if you only watch 3 episodes of the show, watch Identified, Confetti Check, A-OK, and A Question of Priorities, because it's like a trilogy that will tell you a lot of everything you need to know about the show. And if you like those, then you can move forward and go see more.
And I had my confetti check just the other day. So,
and now on that note, it brings us to number 48 with another debuting show on our countdown.
48
and
no
58. I said 58.
You said 48.
Oh no, it brings us to number 58 and a new show on our countdown. Once again, Robert Burnett is going to tell us what it is and why it's number 58.
Tell him, Rob.
Again, I hate that I feel like a crutch of we have a crutch of this show now, of our countdown, which is series finales. It's a crutch. And it will
Now, they
continue to
often
be.
are the best episodes because they know the characters by then. They know, the stories have more emotional resonance because they usually put a lot more resources and money into them.
Yes, and this episode is called Mirror Image. It is the 22nd and final episode of season 5, also the final episode of the series of Quantum Leap.
Next, it's the leap you've been waiting for years. The final leap.
This is where it all started.
Now, all your questions will be answered.
You are the one who's been leaping me.
Come back one last time to see how it all ends.
I want to go home.
The Final Leap at its original time on NBC next.
And we begin with Sam. He leaps to the day of his birth. And he basically... he gets involved in an intimate sort of a family situation, trying to help people out. And when he goes back into time to his own birth, he looks into a mirror and sees his own image looking back at him, but it's not him. And it's just, you follow this guy, you find out that Sam actually created the Quantum Leap program. And it's just... he's offered a choice. Does he keep going or does he go home? And he ends up, he makes the choice not to go home and to keep leaping through time. And he helps a family friend of his and changes the past. And it's a wonderful episode. And it sort of encapsulates the whole series. And I love this show. I've gone back and revisited the show over the years, and it really holds up because of the relationship of Dean Stockwell's character and of course Scott Bakula, and it's just a great show. And this season finale is very, very satisfying.
Created by Donald Belisario, who is a protege of the late Glenn Larson. He actually some of his earliest scripts were for the original Battlestar Galactica. He later went on to create Magnum PI and, of course, famously Quantum Leap and later NCIS. But some would argue that Quantum Leap is probably his crowning achievement.
No, it's great. And the funny thing is, this is not an apocalyptic show. Sam goes back and saves the life of a person for a friend, and changes the course of a life. It's a small show, but it has such big emotional resonance, and it's everything you want from a series finale. It's very satisfying.
The idea for Quantum Leap came out of an episode he wrote for Galactica, which was called Experiment in Terra. And it is when Apollo jumps into the City of Light, the light ship, has Apollo appear as someone else to stop a nuclear war on a planet called Terra. And it is very much a Quantum Leap episode. And in a lot of ways ended up inspiring Quantum Leap was him taking that concept that he'd done for Galactica and doing it on Earth with this character of Sam Beckett. But had it not been for that Battlestar Galactica episode, it's unlikely there would have been a Quantum Leap. So, there's certain eddies and currents that draw us to these things. Number 57, another show making its debut on the countdown. This is Star Wars, The Clone Wars, and much to Rob Burnett's chagrin, it is indeed the series finale. This is the 4-part series finale, Old Friends Not Forgotten, The Phantom Apprentice, Shattered, and Victory and Death. This resolves the battle for Mandalore and culminates with the dreaded Order 66, in which the clones turn on their Jedi masters and flee, and Ahsoka Tano disappearing into the night, and ends with an iconic image worthy of any of the movies and far exceeding probably most of them, where Darth Vader finds the last remnants of Ahsoka Tano, his former protege, his former Padawan, on this snowy planet, realizing that she is still alive and in the wind, so to speak. It is a very powerful and moving conclusion to a spectacular show, which began on the Cartoon Channel as a semi-kid show, kind of like, standalone, kind of better than Droids. But by the time it hit its stride in late first season, through the second season, certainly in this finale of in which Disney Plus finished the last couple of episodes that had never been finished. It is absolutely some of the best Star Wars storytelling. I think one of the best raves I heard is it redeems the prequels. And I don't know if that's quite true, but in a way it will make you appreciate the story telling of the prequels that much more, because the story of the Clone Wars is really one of deep complexity, emotional weight, and loss and tragedy.
Were you not cast out of your order?
I left voluntarily.
Yes, but you were motivated to leave by the hypocrisy of the Jedi Council. We were both tools for greater powers.
I am here to bring you to justice.
Justice is merely the construct of the current power base. A base which, according to my calculations, is about to change.
And Darth Sidious is behind it?
He is behind everything. In the shadows, always, but soon, very soon, he will reveal himself.
With your help, the Jedi can stop Sidious before it's too late.
Too late? For what? The Republic to fall? It already has, and you just can't see it. There is no justice, no law, no order, except for the one that will replace it. The time of the Jedi has passed. They cannot defeat Sidious. But together, you and I can. Every choice you have made has led you to this moment.
Look, I love the Clone Wars. Like, I big time hard hands like the Clone Wars, and I love these episodes. They almost convinced me that Revenge of the Sith was good. And then I went after I watched this and I watched Revenge of the Sith again. I was like, no. It's like if you watch them all together, it would be like, what if somebody cut all of the good shit out of Revenge of the Sith? And the Clone Wars just exposes the fundamental weakness of literally every aspect of those prequels, because you realize how much potential was there and how much of it was wasted. But I don't want to dwell on the negative. I love these episodes. I love Ahsoka Tano. Like, I love the Clone Wars. I think this is a totally, totally fantastic pick, and I just love it.
Number 56. We've done a lot of pulp, but now here's some true science fiction from 1979. Rob Burnett, tell us what it is.
This was PBS's first foray into making a feature film based on a literary science fiction novel, Ursula K. Le Guin's The Lathe of Heaven.
I want you to dream peace on Earth. No more war. No more mass killings of humans by other humans. No more fighting in Asia, Africa, the Middle East, or anywhere in the world. Antwerp.
It remains one of my favorite science fiction films of all time. It stars Bruce Davidson as George Orr, Kevin Conway, who people know from Deep Space Nine, as William Haber, and Margaret Avery. And for those of you who are pillaring me online all the time, Margaret Avery I actually cast in the Axelar feature film as the Federation president because she was in this movie. We never got to make that, but whatever. So this film is basically about a man living in a future Portland, raining all the time, ecological collapse, who is an effective dreamer. His dreams change reality, but nobody knows it but him. And people think that he's just got some kind of dream problem, and he ends up in a relationship with his ornithologist, his dream psychiatrist, essentially. And this doctor, William Haber, comes to realize that George Orr has effective dreams that do, in fact, change reality. And this sort of megalomaniacal doctor with a god complex starts to try and fix mankind.
With the best of intentions.
With the best of intentions, and the road to hell You know, he wants to get rid of racism, so a dream changes everyone into ashen gray people. And he wants to unite humanity and make everybody believe in the same things. And what happens? Humanity is united against an alien invasion. And at the same time, poor George Orr is trying to figure out what is really going on. Is his psychiatrist crazy? Is he solving his problem? And then he falls in love with his own lawyer. And reality, indeed, the universe is at stake. And this was a film made for $250,000 in 1979. But it is one of the most epic science fiction films I've ever seen. And I'll tell you something. I had seen it before I got a VCR. And I got a VCR, and I was at summer camp, and I was explaining to people, damn it, if only I had a VCR when this movie aired. And when I came home from summer camp, magically, the week after I came home, it aired on TV, and I recorded it. And I probably watched this movie 100 times. And it's one of my favorite science fiction films. Unfortunately, it only came out on video once, on Blu-ray, or pardon me, on DVD. On DVD. Yeah, DVD. And they've lost the negative, and they had to do a sound-alike. They used a Beatles song with a little help from my friends that they had to replace because they didn't have the rights to put it on home video. But it remains someday. The negative.
Not only that, it was a second generation. They had lost the master, and it was off an air. So it's a very ratty looking version of Lathe of Heaven. It's only been released on DVD, which is why I think it's so underseen.
If any of our listeners participate in effective dreaming, think about bringing us the masters for the Lathe of Heaven, and I'm just going to give you one word. Antwerp.
Well, this negative exists, and I'll tell you something. The cinematographer of this film, I actually met him because he shot Free Willy, which I worked on, and it was amazing to talk to him, and he laughed when Robbie Greenberg, who shot this movie, couldn't believe that I was like the ultimate Lathe of Heaven fan. And I would take him aside, and I'd make him tell me stories. And he's like, you know what? We didn't have much money. I said, I know, man, but tell me about how'd you do this?
Yeah, Rob, I could not agree with you more. This debuted on PBS in 1979. It is one of the great televised pieces of science fiction ever. The budget doesn't really affect it because mostly it takes place in rooms between Bruce Davison and Kevin Conway. The performances are superb. It's amazing that PBS produced this. It's amazing that there has not been science fiction novelized science fiction produced at this level since. Very rarely very famously, NBC did a miniseries of The Martian Chronicles, which is not very good with Rock Hudson. Right. The Lathe of Heaven shows you exactly how it's done. And as you said, it's only been released on DVD and then not very a very unsatisfying transfer. And even that DVD is now long out of print. It was new video, I believe.
Yes.
And so most, if not all of our audience is probably not familiar with this. If you have any way to see this film, you will not be disappointed. It is spectacular.
But I have to say, it was remade in the early aughts with James Caan.
Yeah.
And that was nothing like this film. not to belittle the work of other people, but it's not this. You've got to
find the score is ahead of its time.
Amazing. The score is amazing. I think it's on YouTube. I think you can watch it on YouTube.
It probably is.
Yeah. I'm so glad to see this on our list. Fantastic choice. That brings us to number 55, a classic TV series. Darren, tell us what it is.
There is a fifth dimension beyond that which is known to man. And it's the Twilight Zone. I buried the lead there. This is one of my favorite episodes of the Twilight Zone, and for very important reasons, it was also my dad's favorite episode of it, and it's called Walking Distance.
Martin Sloan, age 36, occupation, vice president, ad agency. in charge of media. This is not just a Sunday drive for Martin Sloan. He perhaps doesn't know it at the time, but it's an exodus. Somewhere up the road, he's looking for sanity. And somewhere up the road, he'll find something else.
It's the story about this guy who has to stop for gas at a small rural station that is, about a couple miles away from the town that he grew up in. And so when he's getting the car fixed up a little bit and refueled, he's going to take a few minutes to go over and walk and see how his old hometown is doing. And that walk takes him into the Twilight Zone, because when he arrives, it is exactly the way it was when he was 8 years old. And he begins to realize that it is, in fact, the same time as it was when he was 8 years old. And he is visiting that time. And he sees himself. And he sees his father, who is still around. And he realizes that through his actions, he falls off a merry-go-round and hurts his leg. And that incident happens, and he goes to talk to his father. His father doesn't really know who he is, we think. But I think that at some point the father realizes. And he explains to him that even though it's nice to visit this place that he grew up in, that you can never go home again, because this summer is for him, the 8-year-old version of him. And as he has this wonderfully emotional discussion with his father, who is long gone, and he walks away, he walks back to the gas station, we see he has a limp now. And it's really a heart-wrenching and wonderful episode. And I absolutely love it. It's a simple story, but it's so exquisitely told.
I will be shocked if we don't see more episodes of Twilight Zone on this countdown. Twilight Zone is the it's probably the best science fiction.
It's the gold standard for storytelling.
Indeed, it is. And this is the first Twilight Zone to appear on our countdown, but I'm sure not the last. And that brings us to number 54, The Walking Dead, The Grove. Now, there are a lot of episodes of The Walking Dead that are viscerally charged, that are nail biters. For many seasons, The Walking Dead was probably the most intense and one of the smartest genre TV shows on television. But in the case of The Grove, there was probably no episode that was more emotionally powerful than this episode, in which basically Carol is charged sort of with these two girls who have become her surrogate children in a sense, because in the second season she lost her daughter, who was turned into a zombie, and now after having been bit, she's going to have to kill the girl. And it gave us the famous line, "Look at the flowers, look at the flowers." And it's extremely powerful for people who thought this was just a roller coaster ride with great effects and great zombie action. The Grove proved that this was also a great drama and a very powerful episode of The Walking Dead. And that's why it's number 54 on our countdown of 101 great sci-fi and fantasy episodes.
Ironically, I agree that this is a great episode. It is also the episode where The Walking Dead lost me. I was like, wow. Once I watched it, I was done. And it was just because, it was, again, it's not about whether or not it was good. It was incredibly good and incredibly powerful. But I was just in a place where I was like, look, I'm a new dad. And like, I'm out.
And that's completely understandable.
Yeah.
It's very hard to watch.
Yeah, it's
very
great.
hard to watch. And it really makes you feel for her situation, because obviously it was very powerful when her daughter dies on Herschel's farm. And I think there are a bunch of episodes of The Walking Dead that potentially could have made our list. But again, this is an hour of very powerful drama and not just amazing set pieces and suspense. there's a reason I think it's considered such a beloved episode of The Walking Dead, which now brings us to number 53, a show in a way that's making its debut on our countdown. Maybe, kind of, I guess it is. Rob Burnett, tell us what it is.
Well, to keep up with our theme of series finales, one of the most epic series, a 3-part series finale, season 4 of Ron Moore and David Icke's reboot of Battlestar Galactica. This, first of all, this show first begins as we're going to save Hera, the Cylon human hybrid baby that has been taken by the Cylons to figure out the secret of reproduction, and a classic movie trope. Let's go save the kid, and let's go save the kid. This might be our last hurrah. And all of our characters, the final 5, the reveal of them and everybody, all the plot comes together, and it becomes the ultimate men, women, Cylons, collaborators, everybody on a mission to save a baby, to save a little girl, basically. And it is epic. I mean, it pulls out all the stops. The effects are incredible. We're going to go invade whether it's your mountain fortress, whether it's the Death Star, or whether it's a Cylon base. I mean, it's amazing, and the action is incredible, and it's an incredible culmination. And you think that it's the Wild Bunch, you know, they're this is it. But oh no, then it becomes the Jimi Hendrix comes into play. God comes into play. The unspoken character that's always been with this series. The Cara Thrace, the Starbuck, Angel Starbuck, Divine Starbuck, whatever. And at the end, you think all is lost, but no, at the last minute, there is. I mean, any other series, Deus Ex Machina would have been frowned upon, but in this case, the God was always with us. So we make a jump. The Galactica's back. She's broke. Her back is broke. She'll never jump again, as Ty says. They find Earth. They find the real Earth.
What?
I know, terrible, right?
Can you hear something funny? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I have to say that I don't know why. A lot of people complain about the end of this show. This show, the end of this, when they get to we got proto-humans, not proto-humans, but not Neanderthals, but emerging 150,000 years ago, what we were like. And the Galactica finds us. And the last hour of this show is, for me, I cry and blubber every time I watch it.
Or, as I like to call them, just hot enough humans.
Rosalind dies in Adama's arms, basically. Angel Starbuck is talking to Lee, and she just disappears. I mean, it is so poignant. They send off the entire fleet into the sun to the strains of the original Galactica music. Bear McCreary's score, he kills it, just kills it. Everything about this, and while the denouement, whatever you want to call it, you already got the action, the ultimate battle for Hera and all that. But this episode kills me, man. And then at the very end, you jump 150,000 years into the future to our present day, and what has happened before will happen again. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. And Jimi Hendrix kicks in.
Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan, that's what I meant. It is
because
Bob
Hendrix
Dylan
did the cover. It's a Bob Dylan song.
So this is probably the most surreal experience that I've had on this podcast ever. And I'll tell you why. So I have this amazing ability to avoid spoilers. I don't know what it is.
Oh no.
Somehow I managed to not know how Harry Potter ended until the second part of the last movie came out. Then I realized, they just talk about wands. I still don't know how Lost ends. I don't know how Battlestar Galactica ends, because it kind of lost me for season. I figured I would pick it up and watch it. Now, I have, Rob, for the last 30 minutes while you've been talking about this episode, I've had you on mute. So I still don't know how it ends. I've just been watching you do this.
That is hysterical. Well, that gives the game away. I have to say that the finale is perplexingly polarizing.
Yes.
I totally share Rob's assessment. I think the finale is superb and emotional and delivers the goods and sticks the landing, unlike some of the other endings that Ashley just alluded to. For example, Lost. But I love this 3-hour finale. I think it works. I think, the last season of Galactica is probably its most uneven. I'm the least enamored with the final season. I wasn't a big fan of the James Callis Baltar arc and some other things, but I do feel that it stuck the landing in a big way, and it's a great choice.
I have to say that, again, a lot of people, I guess they didn't, the mystical element that they deal with is part of the show. I mean, from the very beginning, whether you are a believer or not, whether you're a religious person or not, there is a super intelligence, call that intelligence God or whatever, that is part of the show from episode 1. Angels, demons, whatever. Whatever it is. And it's there. And I think they really incorporate that in this finale in a very interesting way.
I think people want answers, but they can't handle the truth.
No,
because it's like,
right.
I think a lot of people don't like it because it didn't tell you who Starbuck was, and they resent that. And I think it's the same thing with Lost. Look, I don't like the Lost finale, but it gives you answers. Then you're not happy with the answers, and then you turn on the show you loved. It's the same thing with Game of Thrones. Like, you know what? You didn't see the fact that Daenerys Targaryen, bloodline was screwed up, and that at some point, after all the horrible things she did, that she wasn't all sweetness and light and was capable of great destruction. And they're like, oh no, how did this happen? Well, Game of Thrones, man, it's the worst. And it's like, do you not remember the previous 6 seasons that you absolutely loved and adored, and now you're going to dismiss it because you hate the finale?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing with Lost. I certainly don't like the finale. It sounds like you're not a fan of the finale. Doesn't mean I dismiss everything I loved about it.
Right.
Anyway, that is Battlestar Galactica. Ashley, you're off the hook. You're unspoiled. Don't listen to this podcast until
you're unsullied. In fact,
you're unsullied. Exactly.
But not
I've been across the streams.
I'm like fully functional.
Which brings us to number 52.
52.
And you may be equally perplexed to find out this show is returning to our countdown. Darren Doctorman, tell us what it is.
From the sublime to the totally ridiculous, another venture into Lost in Space, The Mechanical Men. Now,
how is this on this list? So how so many episodes of Lost in Space?
It just is,
show?
Rob.
It just is.
We this was a collaboration between all of us, and I think there's a lot of things that I think we can all agree we're very happy with, and from time to time there are things we disagree with, but ultimately, I think we landed in a very good place.
But this list is also things that did bring us joy at one point. So this episode absolutely did, because, of course, I was enamored with the robot from Lost in Space, and I loved it, and I loved every episode that he was a core fixture of. And this one, he is more than in practically any of the episodes. He becomes a god for a little race of mechanical men that look exactly like the Remco toys of the robot that were available in the 60s.
Go figure.
For some reason. And it's just so fun, and it's ludicrous. I absolutely agree, but the robot gets to wear a cape. He gets to wear a crown. It's wonderful. And all these little Remco toys, which, today would cost $1,500 a piece, are featured in there. And, of course, by the time I saw them in repeats, they weren't anywhere to be found. So I couldn't have my, Remco robot toy. So I had to enjoy it on the show. So there.
Okay. Well, that brings us to the final episode of part 2 of our holiday countdown. Making its return again to the show, Ashley Miller, tell us the final episode of part 2, episode 51.
Episode 51 is one of the classic episodes of Lost, and Contra, my very good friend Rob Burnett, I think was also the episode that truly cemented Lost in the popular consciousness as a show that you just had to watch, as great as the pilot was. And I am talking about a little episode called Walkabout, which was the first Locke-centric episode.
Right.
Locke was always the most interesting character on that show in the first season. He had a little bit of an edge to him. He seemed to be the guy who was the most prepared, right? But he didn't seem like a wacko. Like, he knew what was up, man. It's like he was very smart. He seemed to get people. He was kind of the Merlin character in a lot of ways, you know, and just endlessly fascinating and smart. And one of the things that was very powerful about Lost, especially in its first season, was the way the format of the show used the idea of the castaways being trapped on this island as an excuse to go and tell stories about who they were before they landed here, right? And it was always really effective. Like, to me, like, that was always the best use of the Lost mystery box. It was the MacGuffin. We didn't need to know what was inside, because what it allowed us was the opportunity to see who these people really were. They were what was inside of the fucking mystery box, man. And what is inside Locke's mystery box is easily, I think, the best. And incredibly powerful, incredibly moving. We discover like this powerful sort of survivalist, you know, guy who's the one who's going to keep us all alive, that in his previous life, you know, he was a paraplegic. You know, he was in a wheelchair. He was, you know, he was bullied. He was less than nothing. He was treated like garbage. And you just watch
by his own father.
Yeah. Oh my, everything about his life is a beatdown. And at the end of the episode, it's the simplest thing in the world. It ends, his flashback ends with the plane crash. And he's there on the beach without a wheelchair, and he stands up. And you understand everything about him. And you know anything and everything you should ever need to know about this show and this island. And it gives you chills. You know, it can make you cry. It's like, it's so powerful. It's so compelling.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Don't you think that the rest of Lost ultimately did John Locke dirty?
Yeah, I do, honestly.
Like one of the most, not audience, but one of the greatest character betrayals of any writing staff destroying a character is what they did to John Locke. How they,
I think they got caught up in like the unrelenting fabulousness of the backstory and kind of the obsession with the backstory. He was the obvious way into it, and to kind of get into that mystery box, they had to twist him around the gears, man.
And they got rid of him, and they replaced him with a faux Locke that I thought that was the don't get me started.
I mean, but look, but it can't take away. It's like we were talking just now about Game of Thrones, or you know, about like the end of whatever the hell happened in Lost that I still don't know, or the end of Battlestar. If you don't like that, it doesn't take away the power of these stories. And Walkabout is a great story. It's so worth watching. You could just.
I think what people don't realize is that without those flashbacks, Lost would have just been Survivor meets Gilligan's Island.
Yeah.
You know, and those flashbacks are what gives Lost its heft and its emotional weight, you know, and that ability to explore the backstories of those characters. That's also so deeply at odds with what we're seeing at the island. The fact that Kate is a wanted fugitive, the fact that John Locke is a paraplegic. I mean, it's really fascinating. And again, Lost is another one of these, you know, like a lot of these other cultural touchstones, was a huge pop culture phenomena that burned bright for a brief time and then burned out. So it's interesting to see it, you know, coming on strong on our list. I think that's great to see, because it is a show that I think stands the test of time, unlike a lot of these other cultural phenomena that are, you know, that don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes us to the end of our second episode. Really interesting choices. I know you're wondering, will we be seeing more Lost in Space? Will Deep Space Nine ever show up on the list? What is going on with this crazy list? Well, you'll have to tune in to part 3 to find out when the Inglorious Treksperts return for a holiday special, part 3. Until then, on behalf of Rob Burnett, Ashley Miller, myself, and Darren Doctorman, keep on trekking, ingloriously, of course, and we'll see you back here for part 3 as we continue with episode 50 on our list of 101 greatest sci-fi episodes of all time.
You know Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen, Comet and Cupid and Donder and Blitzen. But do you recall the most famous reindeer of all? Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer. Oh, he had a very shiny nose. And if you ever saw it, you would even say, it glows. All of the other reindeer, oh, they used to laugh and call him names. They never let poor Rudolph play in any reindeer games.
Then one foggy Christmas Eve, Santa came to say,
Rudolph, with your nose so bright, won't you guide my sleigh tonight?
Then all the reindeer loved him, as they shouted out with glee,
Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer, you'll go down in history.
You're listening to the Electric Surge Network.